Hey everybody, Nick here. In recent videos, I've mentioned how I'll often shoot with both my RED V-Raptor X and my Canon mirrorless bodies, and that I find them pretty easy to match in terms of color and grading and so forth, even though they're very different cameras, different sensor sizes, different levels of dynamic range, etc. And some of you have asked me to show you guys a demonstration of matching that footage, or just show you guys how my workflow is for that. So I thought today would be a good opportunity to do so. I went with my wife on a hike recently. It was a totally uncontrolled environment. You know, the sun was coming in and out. We had both the V-Raptor X and the Canon R5 C. They had different lenses on them. They were even shooting in different formats. On the V-Raptor X, you can shoot really high frame rates in RAW, whereas on the Canon, if you want to go up to something like 120 frames a second, you have to shoot XF AVC 4K. So these are really different types of footage coming from different cameras, different lenses. So this is just footage from that hike, as well as a couple other clips a little bit later on that are just some random clips from around the house. Okay, so if I told you that that footage was actually all from just one camera, would you believe it? And which one would you guess it was? Or what if I told you the first half was camera A and the second half was camera B? Or what if I told you I alternated between camera A and then camera B? Right? You probably don't have a super firm guess either way. And what I did was, in fact, I just alternated from one camera to the other. Let's go through the footage again, and this time I'll show you the labels. Okay, so what did you think? I didn't spend a tremendous amount of time making sure these matched. I didn't go through a crazy amount of color grading for any of them, just sort of did my usual quick and dirty process, and when I was happy enough with it, went to make this video. So let's take a look at that process. Starting here with this little opening shot of my wife sitting on the trail, you know, she's playing with her hair there, and then the next one here. These were shot again with different lenses, and they're not at all fancy lenses. These just happen to be two little tiny lenses that I just adore. This is the 50mm f1.8, the so-called nifty 50 in RF mount, and the same 24mm RF 1.8 IS lens. So these are both lenses I just love using. I did a recent video on how you can get extraordinary footage and take advantage of everything the Raptor X has to offer, even with those tiny little lenses. And I put the 50mm on the V-Raptor X and the 24mm on the Canon R5 C. And let's take a quick look at the color grading. And a quick note, for those of you in the comments, if you're the type of commenter who is a fantastic colorist and you have wonderful, extensive knowledge of DaVinci Resolve, if you want to make a comment about how I'm doing something wrong, that there's a superior, more efficient method, that's fine. My only suggestion is maybe make it in such a way as to be helpful for those who are reading the comments and want advice along this journey. If you want to tell me I suck at this and I don't know what I'm doing, that's fine. You know, honestly, I probably only know about 2% of what DaVinci Resolve has to offer. But I'm always trying to learn more, and it's fine. If you tell me I suck at this and here's the more efficient method, I'll look it up and I'll try and get better at it. And just for others, you know, maybe help them. Like, oh, hey, you know, it might be helpful if you took a look at this video. This colorist has a really great way to explain an alternate method to do what you're doing. So I'm just asking that you help others along the way. If you just want to be right on the internet, that's fine. You can make that comment, but I'm just suggesting you do it in a way as to help others. Anyway, okay, let's take a look at this tree. It's not the most organized one in the world. A lot of the work is being done by film convert over here. This node that I have selected, that's what I use to do my, you know, output color space transform, sort of. It compresses the colors into a screen referred space, so I don't need an output CST. And I'm not using an input CST either because FilmCon lets you select your camera profile. So if I was doing this a different way, you know, I might have the more traditional input CST, output CST, all the primaries, secondaries, look, all that kind of thing. But this is a little bit more simple. FilmCon does most of the work. I have a couple of little beauty layers that just take a little bit of the edge off. If we turn those off, you can see it's very little. It's almost just like a mid-tone detail decrease. A little curves here, and also a little bit of work in the primaries, just shifting the colors a little bit. And scatter is actually off, so this one isn't doing anything. So it's really just a tiny curves adjustment, a little bit of work in the primaries to get the colors the way I want them to, and then film convert. And then this final node is the mono node's skin tone checker, just so I can check where my colors are. And this is probably shifting a little bit more magenta than I'd like. If I was going back here, I'd probably go into the primaries, go into the gain, shift those a little bit more. Let's see. Yeah, probably do something a little bit more like that. Push the shadows down to magenta, maybe more like that. I don't know for sure. Yeah, that's warmed it up just a little bit compared to where we were, but okay, that's what I showed you. So there it is. And now let's compare that with the R5 C clip. And again, this was changing conditions. You can see there's a cloud overhead now, so all the shadows are real soft and there's no hard lines anywhere, but then the sun came out. And so they're not gonna match perfectly, but you can see they're pretty darn close, right? And when I go in here to color this one's a little bit more because I've added the input color space transform. So what I do is I generally grade the red clip first, get that to where I want it to be. Then I copy it over to a Canon clip that was shot in a similar place. So if I have two cameras shooting the same scene, I'll grade the red one first, then copy those settings over to the Canon, and then add a couple of things. So here's what I've added. The first one is an input color space transform, putting the Canon colors into the red pipeline so that when it gets to film convert, it will eat it as if it's eating red footage. But crucially, I don't give it a color space transform, just a gamma transform. So if I tell it take the Canon colors and make them red colors, it tends to shift everything in a really weird way that does not give me consistent results. You can also skip the color space transform and just tell film convert, hey, this is a Canon R5 C camera, but I've found that using film convert, I get more consistent results this way with a color space transform that only does the gamma. I know that's odd, that might be weird. Again, there are those of you in the comments who will tell me I'm doing this all wrong, but I'm happy enough with the results that I've gotten. As you can see, these clips are pretty convincingly close. They're not perfect, but they are not too far. Like, this is kind of maybe in between the clouds. So yeah, look at that one versus that one. Those are pretty darn close. And it's the same story again with just the color space transform that only does the gamma. Like, as we scroll through these quickly, I don't even remember which was which, right? Like, look at those two. Those are so similar. And that's Canon and that's red. Here, let's turn the labels back on. There we go. Okay. Canon, red, Canon, red, Canon. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's, yeah, these ones ended up really, really close as well. Canon RED. Canon RED. One thing I did for the Canon shots was that I actually added vignette because the 50mm lens had a little bit more vignette, or I might have stopped down the 24mm lens a little bit. I can't remember what happened, but to make them match, rather than subtract vignetting from the 50, because I kind of liked it, I just added vignette to the 24 to make them look a little more consistent. And then sometimes I would then re-darken the sky. So the way I did the vignette is I just make a separate node here, and I just drop the exposure like 0.2 of a stop in the HDR panel over here, because it does it in a non-linear way that matches actual exposure changes, just like vignettes work. And then I do a power window and kind of get the size and blending that I want. So depending on the lens and how much vignetting, you know, I might change the size of this, enlarge the blending radius. But so whatever it was for this one, I was happy with the way it was. And then you click this to invert it. Otherwise it would be darkening the center. But this makes it just darken the corners exactly like a real vignette works. And then this one was the sky. I either brightened or darkened the sky or whatever. So another just random thing there with another couple of power windows using gradients. I think that was originally intended for a different shot, and it just carried over when I copied some settings, and I never bothered to fix it, which is what happens sometimes. Okay. Okay, these ones are all good. Let's go this way. Yeah, these ones I thought also matched pretty darn well. And this was another example of going into this node tree looks a little bit different because I was trying to be a little bit more organized or consistent, having like a real primaries node just to mess with those. I also, on the Canon clips, drop the mid-tone details somewhere because it makes them match a bit better. So watch this. So from this one to this one, right, we kind of like how those match. If I didn't drop the mid-tone detail, it somehow looks a lot harsher now. And that's kind of one of the things I noticed between the RED and the Canon is sort of just this overall harshness. And I think it's largely due to the OLPF, but I'm not sure. But dropping mid-tone detail somewhere before your final color space transform, or in this case, the film convert node, I think really helps to bridge that gap. And if I'm processing the raw, I'll often drop the sharpness on the raw processing. This was just another random thing I wanted to show you guys just to demonstrate the power of these cameras, right? So this is R5 C footage, and this was shot in RAW. It's quite a bit overexposed, a lot of the background's clipping, but what I wanted to demonstrate was just how darn far you can zoom in. So this is a 250% crop, and that totally plays. You could totally use that footage. Sorry, it's a little jumpy there, but that is so crystal clear. And that's the Nisi Athena lens, you know, so nothing crazy exotic, and yet because of that sensor, you can get away with quite a bit. It's pretty fantastic. Okay, let's go over here. This is where I got a little bit more rigorous with stuff. So here's the RED. So, okay, this is a little bit better of sort of a scene referred node tree for you. So we have a CST in if we want it. This is my like vignetting node. Exposure changes if we need it. This one isn't doing anything. Primary changes. This one is. It's you can see the whole scene's a little bit purple without it, and then with it we get better. Another node here for secondaries, but I'm not using it. Scatter, curves, the little beauty layers just to take out a little bit of that mid-tone detail. It's super subtle. And then film convert. So this one is where both of these are raw. So that's the RED footage, there's the Canon footage, and basically just has a different primaries correction. They're pretty similar, but it has the CST-in, again, that only messes with the gamma and not the color space, and then different primary corrections so that you can go from one to the other. Again, they're not 100% perfect, but they're darn close. And then, yeah, like when you go from there to there, I would believe that that was the same camera. And this is another zoom that's pretty intense. I think this is 200%. Yeah, 200% zoom, but it totally plays. And then there's the Raptor again. So that's, a real quick and dirty test, nothing super formal there. Again, for me, I always start with the RED footage, get it to where I want it to be, and then do something to make the Canon footage match it. That's how I've found I get the results that I like the most. And again, you are likely a much more competent DaVinci Resolve colorist than I am. I'm barely competent enough to do what I've shown you here. I'm much more dedicated to the craft of photography and cinematography than I am to editing and color grading, which is a much more tedious task for me, I find. I'm more interested in other aspects of this journey, but I do it because if you're, a one-man band, it's required. I think it's tempting to take away from this that it doesn't matter what camera you use. And it is true that you can get great results with any camera. And so you should never feel like I'm unable to get good results because of the equipment I have. You can get fantastic results on any equipment. But I would not take the lesson away that there's no benefit to having a better camera. The benefits can certainly become more marginal at the top end, and you're certainly paying a lot more for them. But again, every time I pick up the RED, I come home with footage that I'm generally happier with. If I had to choose between the clips that you've just seen of what I liked the best, generally I like the RED clips better. But if there was an angle I didn't get or a moment I didn't capture that I wanted and I had only gotten it on the Canon, of course I'm going to use that footage, and it's fantastic. The takeaway is there's definitely nothing wrong with using a small camera, and you can put it into just about any workflow. If that's in conjunction with larger cameras, if that's in place of larger cameras, any of those things are fine. If you want more information on all this, if you want me to delve into color grading a little bit more, I'm happy to do so. I didn't really go in depth in certain things. Again, I'm not a super advanced colorist, and I will get eaten alive in the comments if I try and tell you guys I know what I'm doing here. So I just try my best, and I have fun, and I'm learning like all the rest of you. My goal at the end of the day is to have a finished feature film, and I'm on my way. I've got the first 10.5 minutes pretty much in the can. And so as I'm learning all of the rest of the aspects of this filmmaking process, I'm sharing it with you because it's helpful to me. And if it's helpful to you, awesome. If not, it's just my selfish way of teaching lessons to myself and getting better bit by bit at what I do. And I hope it was helpful to you. I hope you're having a great day, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.